You're listening to Disturbing the Priest with Brandon Baddock.
Yeah, so bands that I hate. I don't like a lot of them. I used to like Bang Tango, who are kind of, they have some like funk influences in there. But again, like they're not really metal. Like all these bands, they get lumped in with like actual bands who are metal, but they're really not.
Yeah.
Poison's not metal. I guess one of the later bands that I liked came out in like the late 80s and were big in the early 90s. I like Skid Row.
Yeah,
like the
Skid Row.
first couple Skid Row albums. I like Cinderella, especially the first album.
Do you prefer their ballad stuff?
No. I like their rockin' stuff because it's...
I agree.
Yeah, like Night Song's the song itself, Nothing for Nothing. Even there's a really cool song on their kind of forgotten album that they made in the mid-90s at the height of the grunge era, Still Climbing. That was the album called... There's a song called Freewheelin'. It's kind of this fast sort of up-tempo thing. It's really cool, but another band, I like Warrant. Warrant's pretty cool. I actually saw them open up for, I'm going to say it again, they opened up for Dokken.
Nice. Now,
but I definitely prefer the first wave bands,
I totally
Rat,
agree.
Striper.
Yeah.
I'm really not a Mötley Crüe fan.
Really? I actually prefer Mötley Crüe.
Do you remember my, I don't know if you saw my Snapchat story a couple months ago where I ranked all the Mötley Crüe albums and I threw one of their CDs against the wall and it smashed into pieces.
Yeah, I did see.
Too Fast for Love is okay. Shout at the Devil is fucking awesome.
I think their first one is their best. I'll just say.
Yeah, I mean you can definitely make a good case for that.
Because I prefer thrash metal and I think it does have a lot of thrashier.
No, I get
songs to it. I just love. Oh my god, Livewire.
Yeah, it's the big one. I love it. That's a great song. I think I actually might prefer the original mix of it. What is it on Leather Records? It's Leather with a U instead of a U. I like that mix a little bit more. But yeah, so Too Fast for Love is okay. Shout at the Devil's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
Balls
can't
Out.
Go wrong with
full on heavy metal, kick-ass heavy metal record.
Dr. Feelgood.
Dr. Feelgood sucks.
Was that the one you threw at the wall?
No, that was Theater of Pain.
Oh.
I threw Theater of Pain and Girls, Girls, Girls. Those are
that was what I was
going
to ask. Yeah.
Girls, Girls, Girls. I like Wild Side.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
That's about it. There's two songs on that record that sound the same. It's the title track, and then was it 5 Dead? It's like 5. I have to look at the track list.
Yeah. I do like their first 5. They have later stuff, which I haven't even touched, and I don't think I will.
Have you heard the self-titled album with John Corabi on vocals? No. People say that one's good. I don't.
Yeah, I think they're just so past their prime.
So yeah, Girls, Girls, Girls. You have the song, the title track, and then 5 Years Dead. Both the choruses are the same melody, the same hook. 5 years dead, girls, girls. And I remember this guy, he was trying to He was trying to get me into the album. And he's like, "Come on, just listen to this one." I'm like, "No, this one sucks." "Oh, come on. Okay, next track." "Okay, what do you think of this one? You like this one?" I'm like, "No, I don't. It sucks." Same thing with Dr. Feelgood. Don't like self-titled. Sorry.
Kickstart My Heart. How do you feel about that?
That one's okay.
Same Old Situation. It's just such a good album.
The title track's all right, I guess. Mötley Crüe definitely, after Shout at the Devil, they definitely became more of a singles band rather than making fully good albums.
I agree on that. How'd you like
Generation Swine stinks.
Yeah.
They butchered the song Shout at the Devil too. They created this they changed the riff and everything. It's like, what the fuck?
I've heard a track or two off Generations.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That was a lot of those bands. If we're not going to be grunge, we're going to be Manson.
Yeah.
And Wasp did it, as I said before, with Kill Fuck Die, and they did it right.
Yeah.
And that is one of their best albums. That's like a top 5 Wasp record for me. And I say that Wasp being one of my top 3 favorite bands.
How do you feel about the Mötley Crüe biopic? Because that's the only biopic in that genre.
I'm surprised they haven't gotten Me Too'd yet.
Yeah.
But I guess it was. I guess the excuses.
Explicit.
I guess the excuses. It was the '80s, but there's still really creepy stuff going on that they probably should be.
Yeah, isn't Nikki Sixx dating an Instagram model?
Something like Nikki Sixx is a weirdo, but
yeah. I think they all kind of are.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be. You know,
they're all a bunch of coked out, stuffing their dicks into burritos. And it's like, what the fuck?
Now,
it's like, why do people celebrate this? This is just a bunch of degenerates.
Yeah. Now, in terms of like that, like drugs and like sex and stuff, how involved were like the other bands like Cinderella and like Tesla?
Oh, I'm sure they were. I mean, it was the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it wasn't just, everyone. It was the big lie that was cocaine. Oh yeah, we're pushing so much product. We're getting so much stuff done. Just watch, you watch like Wolf of Wall Street,
Yeah.
Everyone was doing cocaine in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it was probably, the amount of excess and decadence that was going on in that particular scene at that time with those bands.
The peer pressure.
Yeah. You talk about like, all the crazy shit that was going on at like the Rainbow Bar and Grill.
Yeah.
Which is a legendary place. I want to go there.
Me too. The Lemmy statue there as well.
Oh, I got a funny cocaine story. So Dokken was shooting the video for Dream Warriors, which was the title song for like Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so they had Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger, on the set. They're doing the video. They got all the sets from the movie to shoot the video. And in between takes, Robert Englund, he's got the blade glove out with, all the like knife fingers and shit. And he's serving up Coke to everybody on him. He's got lines of Coke on the blades. And everyone's just like, I hear you want a bump, man? And everyone's just, everyone's like giggling. If you look closely, like a bunch of people are just giggling and laughing throughout the whole video.
That's so funny. I know Black Sabbath, they used to have their roadie put lines on the amps. So people would be like, why are they all going to the amps after every song? And just do like a quick bump.
Yeah, didn't they wasn't it like they were recording Volume 4 and they just had they had like cereal boxes of cocaine delivered to the studio and they dump it into this big bowl and they just stuff their faces into it, right?
Yeah, they pulled a Exile on Main Street with that album. Just like the Rolling Stones, where they had a house they recorded the record in, and it was just like chaos in that house. Like the amount of drugs, tons of groupies as well.
Oh yeah,
just insane. But yeah, Black
all
Sabbath,
the debauchery. Yeah,
their drug peak as a band while recording an album was definitely Volume 4.
Yeah,
Snowblind.
Yeah,
on that
and
record.
Ozzy's just shouting cocaine throughout the whole song. Apparently he did it like a lot more in the studio version, but they edited it out because the label didn't want that. But if you listen to the live versions, he's just shouting cocaine.
Yeah, he is. And I have it. I think it was like Live at Last where he does that, where he's just going cocaine, and I'm like, that's not what I remember in the studio. Like I have the record too, and I'll put it on and spin it, and just to hear Ozzy go cocaine, like to whisper it, pretty frightening. But if anyone's gonna whisper cocaine into your ear, it's gonna be Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, for sure.
Would you consider Guns N' Roses in this genre, in this pool of glam metal, hair metal?
Yes and kind of no. Just because, well, I don't know. I mean, the first album, they're the band that kind of swooped in and changed the whole scene a little bit.
Yeah.
They really came in and hit their stride with Appetite for Destruction. That's when you start getting the more hard rock influences are sort of dominating over the metal influences. Like, yeah, they stripped away all the, pink polka dots and the glammy eyeliner and stuff, but
what
musically,
brought that up was we were talking about like drugs and the scene, and the song Mr. Brownstone about shooting up heroin. It was definitely rampant in that scene. But I think Guns N' Roses,
Robin Crosby,
pretty major player. Yeah.
I mean, he died. Well, he didn't die from. Well, actually, no. Didn't he die from an overdose of that? I think he did, but he was going to die anyway because he had AIDS. He was dying of AIDS anyway. He thinks he thought he got from a dirty needle, which that sucks. I mean, Ray Gillen from Badlands. I mean, there's a reason. You ever hear Badlands?
No.
The band. It was the band that Jakey Lee formed after he got fired from Ozzy.
Oh, I know that singer though.
Yeah, Ray Gillen, and it's a shame because that was. That first album in particular was really, really good. I mean, yeah, Jakey Lee, Ray Gillen, Eric Singer, who's now with. He played on The Eternal Idol.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And then he went on to Kiss. He's now, fulfilling the role of Peter Criss as the Catman.
Yeah. Which, what a tragedy in that whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The
They're
last
planning
show.
on going after Paul Stanley and Gene retire. They're planning on getting replacements, I guess.
Yeah. It's going to be like the Blue Man Group.
Yeah, but that's like, it's so shitty because it's like a bunch of people who do know like a lot of the history behind Kiss and what the deal is going on there. It's like I just can't get into that.
It's a part of seeing Kiss live.
Yeah, and either hearing Paul Stanley like rip apart his vocal cords or he's lip syncing.
Yeah, and
it's a shame because he was a great singer back then, especially in the '80s. He unlocked. I mean, starting with Creatures of the Night, I think he really unlocked his voice, and he was singing high. He was singing full voice high notes because people always talk about the falsetto stuff that he was doing at the end of like I Was Made for Loving You, but he was doing that full voice throughout the '80s.
Yeah.
I mean, you listen to something like
Heaven's on Fire.
Heaven's on Fire, I've Had Enough.
Yeah.
Off the same album. Pretty much anything off Asylum, which is one of my favorite Kiss records. Asylum is a great, great album. Loves a Deadly Weapon.
Yeah.
Even some of the more, sappy stuff. I like Tears Are Falling. I like Who Wants to Be Lonely. And All Night. It's a funny, it's a goofy song, but I actually really like it. It's cool.
Yeah. I think it's such a tragedy with what happened with Peter Criss.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And like
he kind of did it. He
Ace.
brought it upon himself.
And Ace
really.
too. You think so?
Yeah. I mean, Peter Criss, people say he's a crappy drummer. I think he's a decent drummer. He got the job done.
I think he's a good drummer.
But
like, why would you say
he got caught up on it in his own ass, and he was like, I wrote Beth, even though he probably had some help doing it. And
who's that about? Because that was like a very personal song.
I don't even know. I don't even like that song. I kind of purposely avoid it. I don't like Destroyer.
Really?
I don't.
Why?
I only like 2 songs. I like Detroit Rock City and God of Thunder. I can tolerate Shout It Out Loud, but the rest of that record is just filler or just absolute shit. I mean, you've got great expectations.
That was their breakout record too.
I don't know why.
I do like Destroyer. I'd
say Alive was probably more their breakout record.
Yeah, Alive, but like
because there's a reason they came out with Rock and Roll Over so quickly, is because people thought like Destroyer was kind of weird. Because they had Bob Ezrin producing, who is famous for Alice Cooper, all the early Alice Cooper records.
Yeah, I always assumed Destroyer was the one that.
Nah, people thought it was a weird record, and they were kind of put off by it at first, which is why they came out with Rock and Roll Over so quickly, and they changed up producers. They went back to Eddie Kramer, who was the guy who produced Alive, and they came out with a straight out like, okay, we're meat and potatoes, rock and roll. We're not going to experiment or do any like weird shit. Yeah. We're just going to hit you in the face with I Want You and, Calling Dr. Love and whatnot.
Yeah. Is it their third one, Kiss Live, or fourth?
That would be the fourth release. Because you had the debut, Harder Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill.
Because I know Hotter Than Hell, there are a few tracks on that. But what a weird record. What a weird idea for a record. Because it's a live album, but it was all recorded in the studio, so it's more of a comp.
I thought it was a live recording, but they added a bunch of like studio embellishments into it. Like they added like crowd noise and
they added stuff.
I thought the
post.
Actual recording was live. I might be wrong.
I don't think it is.
You get that a lot with some of like the most revered live albums. I mean, Unleashed in the East, Rob re-recorded his vocals. Not in an actual like recording booth, but they had him set up on a stage. He just sang the whole concert again when his voice got better, because I guess he was suffering from like a really bad cold or he had the flu or something. So they brought the tapes back and they're like, oh, this really isn't all that good. So they just let Rob redo it. But everything else on the album is straight from those concerts.
So what happened with that record, Kiss Live, is they did record a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
Recorded a bunch of songs and then listened to them and hated them. So they're like, we'll just do it ourselves. So they just went in the studio and
that's funny.
like recorded them. as if they were live, but
Yeah.
alone, and then added the crowd and stuff. Just like, what a weird concept.
But you know what? It's still a great record. The songs sound great.
Great record.
Because the
Great
big
record.
problem that they had with those early albums was the production, because the sound didn't reflect the way that they sounded live.
Yeah.
A lot, especially the first record, and the second album, Hotter Than Hell, great songs, but it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Like it has a charm to it, I will admit, but
Very
really,
garage feel.
yeah, which doesn't work for a band like Kiss.
I agree. Their sophomore record kind of stands out from their other stuff, I feel like.
Yeah, it's an interesting record. It's got some dark stuff. Like it's got some strange
Going
ways.
Blind?
Is kind of weird. It's a little dark.
Yeah,
It's a
Going
little
Blind is kind of
yeah.
weird. Like the lyrics, like just so weird. And the Melvins went on to cover it, but I love their sophomore one just because of how eerie it is. It's definitely like their eeriest record. I just like the speed of it too. I like Going Blind because it's very slow down and Doom-esque and reminds me of a lot of elements of doom metal. And then you have Parasite, which like does a 180.
That's pretty really fast and
Yeah. Like bam, 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 bam. Like just so good. And I love that record just because of the variety.
yeah. I just wish they would have had Ace sing the songs that he wrote on that, because he was really he had a lot of anxiety about singing, about his voice, I guess. So
Really?
they didn't. That's why they didn't get him to sing until they did Shock Me, like 5 years after that.
So I kind of just want to go back to something because, the members of Kiss, Peter Criss, you were talking about him as like not the best drummer. Why would you say that about Peter Criss, and like what critiques do you have?
I'm just not.
'Cause I'm just
impressed
curious.
by his. He's just not.
Or
Number
just,
one,
like,
he's not
does his
really.
job.
He's not really a rock drummer as such. Like he was in a rock band, but he's definitely like. People would say like the excuse for him is, oh, he's like a jazz, like R&B type drummer, so he doesn't hit as hard. He's not a John Bonham. He's not a
Bill Ward.
no, not by any stretch. So it's just kind of it did kind of hold them back, and take it with a grain of salt because it's Paul Stanley and like Gene Simmons saying it. But
Yeah.
they had a lot of issues with him, like getting to memorize songs and getting him to record. It wasn't until I guess
He was an alcoholic in the beginning, I believe.
I think he was already like doing cocaine
Yeah.
at that point. But I mean, Bob Ezrin says he really worked with Peter and got him to do a solid job on Destroyer. Like he really pushed him.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, Peter. I mean, we got a good performance out of him. So I mean, Eric Carr is miles beyond Peter Criss. I
Really?
think Eric Carr is like the best drummer that Kiss ever had, and it's really it sucks. His death is really it's overshadowed by Freddie Mercury. I mean, obviously because it's Freddie Mercury, but not only that, but it's the same day.
Really? I didn't know that.
It's the same
Wow.
day.
Huh.
Exact, like same day, same year. So
That's
it
wild.
kind of gets overshadowed. But Eric
Yeah,
Carr was
wow.
really, really a fantastic drummer. Great technical ability. He was a heavy rock drummer, and he's part of what gave Kiss like the big heavy metal balls that they had throughout the 80s.
yeah.
I mean, you listen to Creatures of the Night, that sound, he's bashing the shit out of the Skins, but they set the drums up in an abandoned elevator shaft
Oh, really?
and just added
Wow.
a bunch of reverb onto it.
You can
So
hear
that's
it,
why it sounds
too.
so big.
You can hear it. But moving forward to Ace, I think he's another member that got done dirty, with the whole like Gene, such a mess.
Well,
'cause
he stuck it out to the last tour,
he did.
to the supposed farewell tour back in 01.
Do you think
and
they all should have gotten paid equally?
at that point?
Yeah, because that was like the big thing. They all got back together, and Gene's like, all right, so we're going to get most of the cut,
Well-
me and Paul, and you guys will get
And
a fraction.
look, I understand, people, and like I'm not a fan of Paul Stanley or Gene Simmons. I'm not a fan of some of the shit that they do.
As people. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But I will say, And especially in the case of Paul. I mean, I know people typically associate Gene with being like the main guy, but it's actually Paul's band, really.
Yeah.
That is more than fair that they got more because they stuck it out, especially Paul, who without him, I mean, that whole thing would have fallen apart because Gene just didn't care by the mid-'80s. He was off doing his crappy movies. Paul was
Movies?
Yeah, Gene doing like movies. He was
I
like
didn't know
brown nosing his way into like a bunch of B movies.
I had no
He
idea.
dressed really it's like laughably bad.
God.
That's why he was like wearing a wig through most of the 80s because he cut his hair short so he could get more roles.
Oh my God.
But
wow.
so it's fair that they get more because Ace and Peter, he fucked off / got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Ace was like, didn't even know what planet he was on for a few years until he did Fraley's Comet. And
Great album.
I have it on vinyl and it's a great record.
I'm still looking for that one.
If you can get your hands on it, if you see it on a record store, go for it immediately.
Yeah,
It's a good,
definitely.
It's a damn good record.
I got first presses of their first three. Finding Kiss's debut was kind of a pain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's kind of hard to find.
I
Because
have
it's usually beat up.
I got I think it was 2014, 180 gram reissue. Same with I got that with the debut, Hotter Than Hell.
Nice.
I got Destroyer Resurrected. That one. They have the really weird. The artwork is just like really. It looks kind of. Their faces look weird.
Yeah.
And then I got that version of Lick It Up.
You were telling me how you're very picky with like CDs.
Mm-hmm.
Like with like the Megadeth CDs, you were looking for like a certain.
Yeah, I only go for the. I like the original mixes and really the original recordings because Dave decided to re-record them.
Yeah.
But I mean, granted, his voice sounds better on those.
Yeah.
I will say because that's when at that point he'd learned how to sing and his voice was still really intact. But the guitar tones are they're not. Just the general sound of it, like the song "Take No Prisoners," right?
Of course.
That little bass break, that little bass noodling.
Yeah.
In the middle of it after it sounds so cool on the original recording.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't have that same sort of, just something about it just isn't right. So that's why I just prefer the original recordings. I prefer the songs as they originally were. Like I have all the 90s albums, original CDs.
That's awesome. For me,
Rust in Peace through Risk. Which, by the way,
that's
Risk, I
awesome.
like Risk.
I do too. I'm that way, but with vinyl. I need the original pressings because a lot of artists, when they repress stuff, they'll do it digitally, and I hate that. I want it to be as it's supposed to be heard.
Yeah.
Which back then, they put so much effort into making it sound as good as it can be. Mm-hmm. Where now it's like, all right, we'll have a person do that for us, and they'll just throw it on digital.
Yeah. Which, although I will say, Wasp, back a couple years ago, they re-recorded the Crimson Idol, and they called it Re-Idolized, the soundtrack to the Crimson Idol, because there was a whole movie to go along with it, which is really just one big, long music video. But that sounded good because Blackie still has his voice. He sometimes gets caught lip syncing. But
That's kind of a trend in the genre, I'd say.
It's weird because it's only for certain songs. He'll be singing, what is it? I think it's either The Idol or Murder or Chainsaw Charlie where he lip syncs. But then for a lot of the other stuff, it's his actual voice, and you can tell by the footage that he's actually singing.
Why do you think so?
Just with certain motions, like you can discern like when someone's actually singing versus lip syncing.
Why do you think he would like lip sync?
It might, I don't know. It might have something to do with the fact that he's a bit of a perfectionist, or a big time perfectionist, and especially with something like the Crimson Idol, he wants to make sure like that is, the performances are absolutely perfect. Again, I'm not excusing because like, dude, you don't need to lip sync. Your voice sounds like, it's not. Actually, no, it is really, really close to what it once was. And even then, like, I say
that's
I
a good
say
thing.
that, and
Compared to
I say
other
that like,
bands.
what it once was, as if he still doesn't sound great.
Singers, I mean.
Like, why? But I guess the record itself, though, I mean, the re-recording of the Crimson Idol, Re-Idolized, which I have, it's all on red vinyl, which it's on
That's
colored,
awesome. Yeah.
Colored vinyl is a little, isn't that kind of iffy, though, with sound quality?
No, it doesn't matter if it's clear, black, or colored.
As long as it's not a picture disc. Picture disc is where you run
because
into
that's
problems,
like
right?
plastic.
Yeah.
Pretty terrible. But what do you think is the greatest band in the genre?
I would say Wasp, but I don't really include them in that because especially after Headless Children and going on to Crimson Idol, like I've said this with other people, like they kind of transcended that scene because a Rat or a Motley Crüe doesn't make the Crimson Idol, doesn't make Unholy Terror or Babylon or the Neon Gods.
That makes sense.
Really, really like I don't want to say sophisticated, sounds pretentious, but it's really like hard-hitting stuff.
I would personally...
I won't say, I guess to say, I'll go with Dokken.
Dokken?
Dokken.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Because they got the heavy riffs. They don't get enough credit. Like, people always cite, In My Dreams, Alone Again, It's Not Love, the hits, the more mainstream commercial stuff.
Yeah.
But then you get stuff like Till the Living End, Turn On the Action, even the later stuff, Dysfunctional, which has a lot of like Beatles influence in it.
Interesting.
It's a really interesting record. Long Way Home, Erase the Slate, like just really fucking like the song Sunless Days and like Under the Gun are just really, really heavy stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's really cool. And obviously, you don't listen to Dokken because it's heavy, but it's just...
I'm definitely going to check them out. Not that I haven't already, but listen to their albums.
I'll send you some deep cuts to
definitely
get you started. But
for me personally, though, I'd say Kiss.
Kiss?
Kiss started in 73, has just been there ever since. Yeah, of course, they've lost a few members and stuff, but I just think their music is fantastic. I know a lot of people, when it comes to the genre, will say Motley Crüe. But I just think Kiss highlights everything that genre is. There are some dark elements of Kiss. You look at Kiss when Gene does God of Thunder, where blood is pouring out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Creatures of the Night, there's a heavier sense. There's also, with Parasite, there's that fast sense that you hear in Motley Crüe. Like, I feel like Kiss just covers all of that. Mm-hmm. And plus of how early that band started. And I think, like, the cherry on top is they started on a disco label.
That is funny.
And, I know we're not going to associate the genre with image, but the makeup, characters, the outfits, the boots.
Because they definitely, that early look definitely had an influence on, like, Motley Crüe.
Totally.
And I'd say in the 80s, they sort of assimilated into what was happening. Mm-hmm. Like, instead of becoming trendsetters, they sort of, they followed what was going on, but they still had really great music to back it up.
Yeah.
My favorite period of Kiss is the 80s.
Yeah. And of course, like, you have that drug element in that band. Look at all the members who dropped out. Like we were talking about Peter Criss, like, he was a mess in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Ace, too.
He was a drunk, or he was. I mean, Ace, actually, he's doing pretty good now, apparently.
Gene Simmons was a drunk, too.
Was he? I thought he was the no alcohol guy.
Oh, yeah. I think that was that Paul Stanley or both? Like,
no, they both had their stuff together, which is why that was able to last. They were able to keep the shit.
I guess Gene Simmons was the one who was clean cut.
Paul wasn't against, he would, he was obviously like having some fun, doing some partying, but Gene was the sex addict.
I always assumed Gene Simmons to be like the drinker. That makes sense that he was like the sex addict.
Well, he's very anti-drugs, but Kiss is coming out with like, I forget what it was. Are they coming out with like their own Kiss bong or something?
Really?
Something to do with weed.
How has that not come out already? The merchandise? That's another thing with Kiss. The merchandise element of that band.
Kiss condoms, Kiss dildos, Kiss coffins, Kiss caskets, which both Dimebag and Vinnie Paul are buried in, I guess. Which is just weird to me.
That's something that's
I get
so
they were
weird.
big Kiss fans. Like Ace buried Dimebag. He put his Les Paul in Dimebag's casket.
Really? That is just so funny.
That's like, I mean, that's cool by Ace, but the fact he got buried in a Kiss
that is so
licensed
crazy
casket. And then Paul Stanley, after Vinnie Paul died, Paul Stanley's going on Twitter saying, our hearts go out to the Abbott family if they wish for him to be buried in a Kiss casket like his brother was.
Oh my God.
We're more than willing to fulfill that wish. It's like, thanks, I guess.
And of course with a discount. You know, with knowing Gene Simmons. That's a thing with Loudwire as well. If he was on, you'd know he'd be promoting something.
Right.
Like, what was that thing he did?
Gene Simmons Vault.
Yeah, the Gene Simmons Vault. Every time there'd be a question, he'd turn it around somehow to the Gene Simmons Vault. You can learn more about that here in the Gene Simmons Vault.
It's really funny.
Right next to me.
I love when people fuck with the Loudwire guys because I hate all those like metal publications and those metal websites.
Yeah.
Metal Sucks and Metal Injection and Loudwire. It's just like such... It feels like it's run by people that don't even really like metal all that much.
And a lot of the news is stupid. It's like rockers react to...
Yeah. It's like it's tabloid stuff, but metal.
And it's like it's a music thing, and there's so much politics.
Yeah.
Just like so weird.
I would like to talk... If we talk about Alice Cooper real quick, his 80s period.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because that's very interesting. Just before we go, because it's something I wanted to get to and I forgot about it. So Alice Cooper went full on like metal in the 80s, but it was only after his like weird blackout new wave, like bizarre new wave period. We recorded like a few, I think it was like 3 or 4 albums. Dada, Zipper Catches Skin, Special Forces, where he dropped all the horror stuff and he became like this weird, like he looks like a crack addict. It's really weird.
Yeah.
And he got off the road for a little while to like detox and like find Jesus or whatever.
As a lot of metalheads do.
It's that's interesting, isn't it? Hell, like a lot that happens a lot in metal.
Yeah.
You get all these guys who start talking to Alex Jones.
Yeah. Dave Mustaine on InfoWars.
Yeah, it's like Blackie Lawless, Dave Mustaine,
So
Alice
weird.
Cooper.
And it has that like satanic panic element to the genre and like that stigma to it. But yet a lot of the people in the scene are very religious.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't think so, but yeah, they are. And
Hell, aren't like all of Black Sabbath, like they're all Catholics, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, black metal's different.
But
that's paganism. But it's
Jesus.
just really funny, you know, because you have these bands like Slayer.
Yeah,
Tom
Araya
Araya,
is a devout Catholic too, isn't he?
Christian, I think.
Yeah.
Just really funny because
But,
they have the songs like the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And like when I saw them on their last tour, they have an inverted cross made of fire in the background. It's kind of like I talked about this on a previous episode, but it's kind of like saying that like a horror movie director is satanic, or like someone who writes a horror movie is a serial killer. You know, it's just art.
I feel like music is more intimate, so that's why people kind of freaked out a little bit more. Because music's a lot more intimate; it's much more personal.
That makes sense.
But yeah, going back to the Alice Cooper thing. So after his like blackout crack addict period, he detoxes for about 3 years, and then '86 comes out with Constrictor. It's like a weird bridge album. It's in no other record sounds anything like this. It's a fusion between metal and new wave. It's this really bizarre sound with like drum machines and like heavy riffs and like shredding guitar. But then there's also a lot of synthesizers on it too, like The Man Behind the Mask and Simple Disobedience, which I love. I love this drum sound on that song. It's like when that snare kicks in, because I love that 80s, big 80s gated reverb drum sound. But then, you know, he does stuff like Life and Death of the Party, and there's a metal song, you know, World Needs Guts. And it's just a really weird and interesting album. I definitely recommend people check it out if they haven't already. And then he goes full on metal with Raise Your Fist and Yell. You know, you got stuff like Roses on White Lace and Prince of Darkness. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, totally.
And then he kind of assimilates into the more pop metal stuff with Trash, which I used to hate that album because I just despised Desmond
really
Child
heard it.
as a producer. He's done some of my like most hated albums. He did Rat Detonator, which is like, that was like the nail in the coffin for the end of Rat for that period at least. And then I think he did like some Bon Jovi albums or something. He was a frequent collaborator with Paul Stanley on some of their worst songs.
I had no idea he worked with Paul Stanley.
This is the guy who, on a Greatest Hits compilation for Kiss, thought it was a good idea to include "Let's Put the X in Sex." Baby, let's put the X in sex. Love's like a muscle and you make me want to flex.
I had no idea that was on a Greatest Hits.
Oh, God. It's so bad.
Oh, that's so funny.
But I actually grew to really, really like that album. I'm still kind of iffy on the song Poison, although I know that really just
I like it.
Gave Alice Cooper, I mean, that ended up going, like, that record ended up going platinum.
That blew
album.
up.
Yeah. And it was a big, big hit for him. But the rest of that record, I mean, Spark in the Dark, really cool guitar riffs. Really catchy stuff. Bed of Nails. And then he kind of continues that sound with Hey Stupid, which I believe Ozzy Osbourne recorded background vocals on a couple of the songs. But it's just interesting to see how you have all these guys that went from, you had like Kiss and, Alice Cooper too, who went from, they were trendsetters, and then they kind of assimilated themselves into that 80s sound.
Yeah.
It
was also a very
interesting.
competitive scene.
Yeah.
As well. I feel like they were all trying to outdo each other.
Mm-hmm. Like, especially, in the like late 70s, early 80s, all these bands, they were like swapping members with each other, constantly doing shows together. Like, it was like a really tightly knit group of bands.
So that's interesting because all these genres, and we were talking about thrash metal and how all the bands kind of hated each other.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like Hair, to call it, were tighter.
Yeah, because they were all just partying.
And I guess they all started together on
Like,
Sunset.
Yeah, like they'd all compete with each other, obviously, but a lot of those bands, I mean, they were tight with one another.
Yeah. And, like you said, such a partying lifestyle. They're going to run into each other at a party.
Yeah.
And
all the debauchery was going on.
The rest is
Blackie
history.
Lawless talks about swinging off a big flagpole outside a bank on Sunset Boulevard or whatever. He like face planted onto the pavement.
What are some of the craziest stories you've heard in like terms of like parties by bands in this genre? Because there's no really metal genre that parties as hard.
Yeah,
it's like a genre as a whole,
Boy,
because you can look at the Dirt.
I mean,
the
the party was constant. It was like one big, like the whole decade of the 80s was like one big never-ending party. I mean, just constant, like people were having sex everywhere.
Yeah.
Fucking in the dumpster. Chicks would be at, like groupies would be sitting underneath the table while you're eating a pizza and like, fucking in the elevator, stopping when the door opened. And then, when they got out, you'd go back to it.
Yeah.
You'd have sex on the way up to the party. And then find somewhere else at the party to have more sex. It was just like Stephen Pearcy. I read his book, Sex, Drugs, Rat and Roll, it's a pretty good book. And he talks about how he had like a binder. It was like an itinerary of chicks that he liked to fuck in each city.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And like he'd have them ranked. And he'd get their name. He'd get their name. Write them down in this little notebook and, write down, okay, avoid, smells, avoid, she's cute, big tits. It's like, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on? It was just wild times. Like, it would never fly today.
Because,
never. And
sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and this genre was the epitome of the sex part.
And it's crazy, considering this was like the height of the AIDS epidemic, but no one cared. Mm-hmm. They were just doing whatever they wanted and getting away with it. And I mean, you see how a lot of people from that scene and like who were really into that lifestyle, you see how they aged. Like they had their fun for sure.
You can tell. Motley Crüe had a apartment very close to the Sunset Strip, and after the show, they would bring the whole crowd into that apartment. It was like a 2-bedroom apartment, and like. Some of the members would go in the bedrooms, and it would just be like a revolving door of girls. Like there would be a time limit. All right, you're done. Have the next people come in. Tell the next people on deck that they can come in soon. Like like just so wild.
Yeah. They also did some like really weird, like just there was like fucked up stuff going on too. It was like
really weird, almost like college hazing.
Yeah.
And like frat stuff.
Yeah.
Just like so weird. I don't know. It's just like weird, and they highlight a lot of that in the biopic.
Yeah. Apparently the books like goes into even like more detail, which I don't even want to read that.
I assume, the amount of things it didn't show. I don't think it even showed the highlights of what that band has done, but I actually did enjoy the Motley Crüe biopic, The Dirt. I just thought that it was just like kind of a fun movie.
Yeah.
I'm not watching this thing as it's a documentary.
Yeah.
It's just like seeing someone play Ozzy and like snort ants. Mm-hmm. That was a highlight
Jakey
to it.
Lee was there, and he said like, yeah, that was true. And he also said his pee was green for some reason.
That sounds a lot like Ozzy. Ozzy Osbourne, he took acid for a year straight. Every morning he'd wake up and pop a tab.
What the fuck? He is a miracle of medical science, man.
It's wild.
How is he still walking?
Alive? And he outlived Dio.
That's what gets me.
Yeah.
I know Dio was like he smoked and shit, but that was, he drank and smoked, but that's like,
compared to
everyone.
Ozzy, Ozzy smoked like 4 packs a day, you'd think, because he was a heavy smoker. Yeah. That's something he stayed with for a while, even past his drug years. Mm-hmm. But yeah, anyway, I think we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. I learned a lot. This is a genre I'd love to learn more about, and I'll definitely do my own research and listen to some of these bands. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I'd love to have you in a future episode. This was an extremely fun podcast to record. I want to thank my friend for coming on. He knows way more about hair metal than I do. I had a ton of fun recording this, and I will see you guys on the next edition of Disturbing the Priest.